Welcome to Fire Engineering Training Minutes. My name is Shannon Stone, and today we're going to be going over experience-based nozzle technique tips for the Nozzle Firefighter. So we're going to go over experience-based tips for the Nozzle Firefighter. And starting out, one of the most important factors before we even start talking about practical tips is ensuring that we have the right attack package. In this case, we've got a true inch 3/4. We've got a 7/8 nozzle flowing about 160 to 165 gallons a minute. That's going to create about 60 pounds of nozzle reaction. It's going to make it very manageable for Matt here on the nozzle. When we start talking about nozzle positions, there's a lot of different techniques that's used. This position particularly here that Matt's choosing, his favorite one, where he pins it into his hip. Again, that's absorbing the nozzle reaction to his body. We have to take in mind, going through a fire, it is a marathon, not a sprint. So whatever we can do to control our fatigue factor is a big deal. Additional nozzle positions are really important. So Matt can transition to another nozzle position during the fire. This particular one, he uses his body to basically crunch in, and a large portion of that nozzle reaction is transferred from his body down into the ground. Really good position, still gives you great range of motion. As we start getting tired, you see a lot of guys to go to what we call a lot of times the shinner pin or the clamp slide. And a lot of times this is the first go-to move for firefighters, but it works really well. In this case, the nozzle reaction is put on the ground. This is a nozzle position that you see a lot of experienced firefighters transitioning to towards the tail end because it helps with your fatigue. Matt's going to transition back to his favorite position. And in doing so, if you notice, he's going to put the nozzle a good ways out in front of him, almost at arm's length to where he can barely touch the bail. And the reason he's going to do that is when he opens that nozzle, it's typically going to drop back about 2 inches. It's going to settle in. And he wants to keep the nozzle in front of him so that we can hit some very, very important areas that we're going to talk about here in just a second. Secondly, if you notice, he's going to turn his bail towards his nozzle hand. He's not going to have it over here, and the reason we want to do this is in the event that we have some type of surge or pressure or something, he literally just falls towards the bail, and if he catches it with a pinky, the nozzle reaction drops down to next to zero. He can throttle back, he can reposition, he can go back to work. Additionally, when he opens the nozzle, when we're going in for a firefight and we're going in for suppression mode, there's only one way to do it, and that's to have the nozzle completely open. So when he does that, he's going to open the nozzle completely, and he's going to transition his hand back behind. We want to keep your hand off the bail, and the reason we want to keep your hand off the bail is that as we work it aggressively, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to start gating that down. If you notice his hand is here, what we see a lot of times is firefighters want to go here, which works really well, and most of the time, quite honestly, why they do that is because it feels comfortable, but we lose a lot of leverage and a lot of motion when we do that. So if you notice, Matt's going to flip his hand here. What this does is this gives us the ability to operate this thing in an aggressive fashion in many, many different directions. So let's take a quick look at what we call the parking lot training and what we typically see in training. Matt's going to open the nozzle, and he's going to demonstrate what we normally see. All right, go ahead and work it, Matt. So as he's doing that, I want you to take notice of the area that he's doing that, maybe even a little wider at points, all right? Go ahead and shut it down, Matt. Now here's what we have to pay particular attention to. When we go into training buildings, we go into parking lots, and we work it aggressively, which is good, we're missing a big point, and experienced firefighters will tell you this through experience, is we're missing 90 left, 90 right, and equally important, directly above you. And in our case, what we prefer is directly behind us. We want to paint the entire box and control the environment. So we tell firefighters all the time that we want to operate it aggressively to the left, 90 right. Matt's going to use his body, not just his hands, to go 90 right. He's going to go directly above him, and if you notice, he's going to go slightly back. The nozzle literally just that much. And we'll put a tremendous amount of water behind us, and we'll really paint the box. In addition to that, he is going to operate the nozzle extremely aggressively. Whether you choose an O pattern, a Z pattern, an up and down pattern, as long as you're operating it aggressively and you're hitting the key areas, 90 left, 90 right, directly above you, directly straight behind you, sweeping the floor and operating aggressively, you're going to have good results. So in doing that, we're going to take a look at what it should look like inside of a building and actually working in what we call the aggressive nozzle. So we're going to demonstrate some experience-based nozzle tips, and one of the things we're going to show you today is Matt actually using the building to his advantage by leaning back, burying his air pack into the building. In this case, it's going to be a door threshold to absorb that 60 plus pounds of nozzle reaction. Whether you're using a door threshold, you're using a wall, you're using something as simple as a piece of furniture, it really helps in absorbing the nozzle reaction. So real quick, Matt's going to demonstrate utilizing the building to his advantage to control his fatigue factor. All right, that's good. In this particular case, it's absorbing the nozzle reaction, whether it's a threshold of a building, a wall, or even something as simple as a couch or a dresser, something that you can utilize. Again, understanding that it is a marathon, not a sprint, and that we have to control that fatigue factor. All the tips we're talking about today really sets us up for success on the fire ground. Matt's going to go ahead and move up, and we're going to demonstrate to you some of the additional techniques. Go ahead and move up, Matt. The other thing worth mentioning too is to pay attention to the stream. The stream will tell us a story. As we're operating that stream in a bunch of different directions, again, 90 left, 90 right, directly above us, directly behind us, it's going to tell us a story. Obviously, a far away sound is going to tell us that we're in a larger building. If I'm working in a residential home and I go above me and I don't hear a sound, in likelihood we're having some type of something going on above our heads, such as a breach of drywall or something along those lines. In the tower, it's going to be resonated, and we know that. But in a real building, it's really going to tell you a story. So as Matt operates it, he's going to operate it very aggressively, 90 left, 90 right, directly above you, slightly back. And the last big takeaway from this is regardless of what you do, you have to do it hundreds and thousands of times. You have to create that muscle memory, all with the plan that one day when things go bad, you're going to fall back on instinct. And instinct in our job is one thing, plain and simple, it's training and repetition. So whatever you do, just practice it until you can't get it wrong. All right, Matt, let's go ahead. Woo. For today's training minutes, specifically on nozzle techniques that we're talking about are going to be applied to what most of America goes to on a regular basis. That's single and multi-family homes. We're talking compartmentalized spaces. Obviously, if we're going into a commercial structure or we're going into a large, laid out, tall ceiling, wide building, our technique's going to be slightly different. For today's purposes, we're talking about the normal American house fire. I'm Shannon Stone, and thanks for watching Fire Engineering Training Minutes.